All right, we're live. Good morning, everybody. Senate Transportation Committee, and I thought we'd just get together and go over a couple of things. Number one, I want to start off by saying I want to thank everybody for what a great job yesterday on the floor. It was very well explained. I'm sorry, Senator Perchik, I handed off to you, but it was it was Senator Ingalls, and I didn't look at my chart close enough, and I want to I think make sure that we thank Liz for all the work that she did getting everything ready for us.
Absolutely.
And Thea, thank you a million times, and Chris, all the folks that helped us get the bill. It was very well presented, I thought, and very few questions. I knew McDonald was going to speak something about the paying your way, but that's an issue we're discussing. And I was Woodstock went through very well, but I think I don't know today if there'll be any questions or not. But and probably I don't know if I dropped the ball on S66. I think that's what we're. I didn't even look on it on the calendar. So that was the electric bicycle bill. Right now, bring me up to date on that bill. Who? Yes, Senator Chitnan.
So I think I dropped the ball. I received an email last week. Okay. Yeah. So I received some emails last week from both advocates as well as I think a communication from Anthea. And I'm sorry if I didn't move on that, Anthea, when you basically informed me that something was coming from the House. I probably should have brought that to you.
That's fine, because I wasn't aware of that happening. I was surprised, so don't worry.
No, the standard practice is the committee would come back and look and say we concur.
That's right.
Or we pass over it and hope to negotiate it. So
I should have called the meeting, got together. But
So-
anyway,
I can tell you the House is having a real hard time with that bicycle bill, and I don't know why that they are. And the other bill that they're having a hard time with, I've got a call from a couple people to help explain it, is the Tesla bill or whatever. And I don't know why they're having such a hard time with neither one of them, but I guess we'll find out about what they're having a problem with 66 today.
So I couldn't understand, maybe Tom can help. I couldn't get my head wrapped around what they're obviously adding something. There's a reason for it. I'm sure it came as a result of some feedback from organizations. And so for me, the basic thing is, do we want to add it? Does it make sense? And do we concur?
So what is it?
Senator Chitnan, why don't you and you or Anthea can bring us up to date? Go right ahead. Thank you.
I'll just split it into two pieces, and then I'd love for Anthea to really speak to what the House has done. My impression is the House is fine with the bill, and that their revisions, there's 3 of them that I'd welcome Anthea to walk through her email because I'll just muddle it up, is that they just revised one of the classes. And other than that, it's just they reformed the language to address a concern raised from a person that already had custom built some bikes down in southern Vermont. So this is more permitting language. The other piece of this is I have, and I think all senators received a thread from Peter Duval, and I've been working through his long email with some concerns about this. Happy to speak to that, but I think that's separate and distinct from what the House has brought over. So Chair Mazza, would it be comfortable if Anthea walked us through the House changes and then we can double?
Sure, that'd be fine. Thank you. Anthea, could you help us, please?
Sure thing. So Liz has given me sharing access. Thank you. So I am just going to put up quickly their proposal of amendment and then a side by side. So the first 5 instances of amendment are adding the word motor assisted bicycle or motor assisted bicycles in all of the sections that you were adding electric bicycle. So for example, you're saying what a vulnerable user is, what an ATV isn't. And in those instances, you were adding electric bicycle to say an electric bicycle isn't a motorcycle. And the House is saying that you should also add motor assisted bicycle there. This came up, and that's the 6th instance of amendment, which is replacing section 3. And I think this one will be easier to see on the side by side because they heard testimony about 2 types of bicycles. One are these e-cargo bicycles that it sounds like at one point they were going up to 1,000 watts, but maybe now the technology has made it so that they can all mostly be 750 watts or under 750 watts. And then also people who are doing DIY electric bicycles, or they're taking a kit so you can convert an existing bicycle into a bicycle with an electric motor. And some of those are either not necessarily going to fall into one of those three classes for electric bicycle, or they're going to be between 750 watts and 1,000 watts. And if you look at the language in S66 as it was passed by the Senate, you were going to, and this is in the left column, change the definition of motor assisted bicycle, which is what all of these bicycles fall under current law for the most part, to say that it's any bicycle or tricycle with a fully operable pedals and equipped with an internal combustion motor. So the House was concerned about bicycles with an electric motor between that 750 and 1,000 watt threshold. And their solution was to change nothing about electric bicycle. That'll still track the three classes that are used across the country. It'll still fall under the federal definition of a low speed electric bicycle that has that 750 watt. But now there will be two instances where you would fall under motor assisted bicycle. Either it's an internal combustion motor, just like the Senate version had, or it's an electric motor. And this is subdivision 2, the big block of text on the right side, or it's a bicycle with an electric motor that's not more than 1,000 watts, but that doesn't fall into one of those three classifications. So maybe it doesn't fall into one of those three classifications because of some way that the kit bike was done, or maybe it doesn't fall into one of those three classifications because it has an electric motor that's 850 watts, just to pick a random number. So that is the testimony and the concern that came up in the House that led them to sort of preserve keeping that higher wattage range that currently is a motor assisted bicycle from inadvertently falling out of the definition of motor assisted bicycle. The other change that they made is in—
Anthea, I'm just trying to sort this out.
Yeah.
So this is adding on this electric motor. So obviously this is, so the distinction between this electric motor and an electric bike is the wattage. Is it, is that what it would have bumped them out? Because we're talking about electric. Well, does an e-bike have an electric motor?
Yeah, so an e-bike has an electric motor.
So I guess I'm just trying to understand what this is. What this is that an e-bike isn't. I mean, they both have an electric motor, and it's just, is it just a matter of the power?
Yep. It's a matter of the power, and maybe it's a matter of there's some industrious person who buys a kit on the internet to turn their bike into a bike with an electric motor that's not necessarily going to be one of the classes, or maybe they're building it from scratch and putting a 850 watt motor on it, and it's not going to fall under those three definitions. But yeah, it's kind of dealing with this gap between 750 and 1,000 watts, and the fact that some people might not just be going and buying an e-bike that's going to have the sticker on it and operate the way that an e-bike operates. My understanding is that there's a little bit of a difference between how it actually is turning the wheel and how the assist works. So there are slight differences between the two if you go the kit route versus the buying an electric bicycle that is made to be an electric bicycle route.
I thought
that's the gap.
I thought the sticker had handled all of that stuff, but apparently they have more time than we have to get in the weeds of this.
I don't care.
I'm gonna be asking for some advice on this one because my brain's not wrapping around it. So I'm gonna go with Senator Perchlik and Senator Chittenden and
Senator Chittenden, go right ahead. You got your hand up. Go ahead.
So in addition to this, I will convey, and Senator Perchlik, I don't know if you spoke to him or not, but I asked him to since you were on that thread. I spoke with Dylan Zwicky, who testified to this about these changes, and he supports them all. He thinks that this is still achieving what we wanted to do, and he said the language just is fine from that perspective. Senator Campion, he was the sponsor or the introducer of the bill. I don't recall him endorsing the changes or not. I can certainly ask him this afternoon. But the sense I have from an email thread from Kurt McCormick as well is that these changes are just small tweaks around the edges, and that they aren't changing the fundamental aspect of the bill.
With that said, I suggest we concur.
Yeah, if there's no big major issues, I don't follow it that closely either. Senator Perchik, you have any comments about this issue?
I'm supportive of concurring, but I just wanted to ask Thea, who did they take testimony from in the House on this issue, or was it just the House members that brought this up on their own?
I think this was originally brought up by Local Motion, and Local Motion worked with People for Bikes to say, hey, what about this gap between the 750 and 1,000 watts? And I think part of what is happening is there are electric bikes that are available all across the country. And then maybe in Vermont, there's a little bit more of this do it yourself, put together a bike, add on a motor that maybe is not what is front and center driving the e-bike industry forward and interests there. And Senator Ingalls, one thing to remember with the sticker is only for electric bicycles, and to match the federal definition, that's going to cap out at 750 watts. So you wouldn't be able to, even if it was coming from a manufacturer, put one of those class 1, 2, or 3 stickers on a bike with an electric motor that had wattage greater than 750. So the sticker is going to give you the differentiation between the 3 classes. This is dealing with bicycles that couldn't fall into one of those 3 classes.
I'll say they're a gap class.
Yep, a gap class is a good way to describe it. And it's keeping the gap class where it is currently, which is a motor-assisted bicycle.
Well, I'm good with concurring too, if everybody else is. To me, that's whatever. If everybody's happy with that, I'm not going to wrap my brain around that anytime soon. So I'm good.
My original question, and I know maybe I'm far out here, but I still have an issue with some 10-year-old buying an electric bike and getting out in the traffic. In the main traffic now, we can ride it right down the middle or right down with cars with no kind of guidance or anything. Is that true? Can you do that today?
Yes.
Or that's going to be a problem in the future, I think. It's pretty difficult because now you're in major traffic. You're not on the side of the road. You are right in main traffic with no experience whatsoever. You can buy that bicycle, get on there, go 20 miles an hour, and go right down through the center of Burlington or Williston or Rutland. Yes, Senator Chittenden.
Is it fair to say, and Thea, if I could direct this at you, to Senator Mazza's point, that this language gets us to a place where if we want to address that concern, we can make a more standardized new regulation stating certain e-bikes cannot be used in public right-of-ways on roadways or so on?
Yeah, so you certainly could. One of the things, so under current law, a motor-assisted bicycle can't be operated on the highway by someone who I think is under the age of 16. So this is opening it up a little bit more. But one thing that definitely came up on the House floor through a lot of debate and in multiple committees looking at this is that maybe the general bicycling laws in the state need to be looked at a little bit more holistically. One of the things that has come up in multiple committees, and House Judiciary took a little bit of testimony on this and then decided it wasn't something they could deal with this session, is whether or not people should be able to get a DUI when they're on a bicycle or on a tractor, which is also excluded from the DUI law. Whether or not there should be more regulations about where they can be operated in general, if motor-assisted bicycle and electric bicycle really should be treated as differently as they might be going forward. So I think that there is a lot of interest on the House side to look at bicycles and the operation of bicycles on the public thoroughfare in future legislative sessions.
Sooner or later, we're encouraging bicycles, and that's fine. But when we do that, we don't say they have to have a real light on them. We don't say a lot of things about allowing these bikes on the highways. And boy, that makes me nervous. Sooner or later, there's going to be some accidents here. And I like to encourage bicyclists, and I think it's a great idea, but there's got to be some rules and regulations about the highways. And I don't know why we haven't addressed that sooner, but I guess,
And I think even you can use stronger language than encouraging, because we're spending millions of dollars with every project that we do to make room for them. And it would, to me, it would make sense that if there was a bike path there, that they ought to ride in the bike path if it wasn't provided before they jump out in the general traffic. But
well, anyway, that's not this morning. I guess the issue is whether we concur, and I sense that we're going to concur. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, Senator Chitney, you're all right with that?
I am. Is that a formal vote with recording and whatnot?
No, I guess we all can just say is there any negatives? All positives?
no,
No,
I'm good.
just concur.
Oh, let's concur. All right, good. That's that. We're also, the miscellaneous motor vehicle bill, that's back to us, right?
It
Right.
is.
Okay, just, we got a couple minutes just to briefly go through some of that. Yep,
Sure thing.
okay.
So I'll do this one as a side-by-side. There are
Okay.
very few changes. So nothing on the first few sections. The first change you're going to get is in section 8. This had to do with the suggestion that came from the Governor's Snowmobile Council to switch over to having the exhaust systems be marked with SSCC certified. So the two changes to this section are to include the acronym SSCC, and we're including it as an acronym because it's then being used to say that any parts should be under the specifications that are outlined by the SSCC. And this was a recommendation that came from VAST. So that is your first change.
Any questions about that? Anybody?
No,
Okay, all right.
fine.
We're all right with that. Okay.
Okay, your next change is going to be in your boat section. There was a missing quotation mark. I assume you're fine with that. The editors found it.
Ooh, voting. Okay, Senator Ingalls.
I'm on it.
And
Okay, no
then-
problem with that. All right.
For purposes of lights that are required, the federal regulations use the phrase "a vessel under oars." House Transportation was concerned that someone might think that it didn't apply to them if they were using a paddle. So they are proposing that it say "a vessel under oars or one or more paddles may exhibit lights," and then not changing the rest of the language. This was something that Sergeant Carbo didn't see a problem with. And I think the House Transportation Committee just thought it was a bit more clarification than just mirroring the federal regs, which uses the phrase "under oars."
All right. No
It's an
issue.
oar and a paddle. They are. It's an,
Same, basically the same. only
An
one-
oar is usually affixed to the boat by putting it into a holder, and
Mhm.
a paddle is something that you usually hold in your hand. Yep, exactly.
I learned that a couple weeks ago. Or
Yeah.
luck.
Oh,
Yes, exactly.
all right,
That's why you're the boat guy. 'Cause I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Yeah.
all right. I want to
Okay.
spend at least an hour on that one.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. We'll assign that to you, Jane. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Okay, the next change has to do with fire extinguishers. And the language that was recommended by the Department of Motor Vehicles, that was recommended by Sergeant Carbo, and sort of coming from the compliance audit, was to use the new fire extinguisher classifications, which are 5B and 20B, as opposed to B1 and B2. But one of the things that came out in testimony in the House is that the B1 and B2 fire extinguishers are still not necessarily, they haven't expired yet. So there are people who might have a B1 or B2 fire extinguisher that still has a few years left on it and would not want to require them to get rid of a operable fire extinguisher prematurely. So instead saying that the fire extinguishers are either B1 or 5B or B2 or 20B. Probably something that's going to need to be circled back on in a few years when those fire extinguishers are no longer available on the market and no longer under their operable lifespan. But that is what the House is proposing there with fire extinguishers.
Somebody must have suggested it.
I think it might have started with the committee. There are at least two members of House Transportation that are well acquainted with volunteer firefighting, and they brought up the fact that these fire extinguishers are still available, but that was something that Sergeant Carbo said he didn't think would be a problem for purposes of the future compliance audits.
Well, it isn't a problem for me.
Okay. All right, go right ahead.
Okay, I think we have one more proposed change in boats, and this has to do with the markings of boats that are owned by governmental entities that are not required to be registered or numbered under Vermont's numbering system. And the addition is to use the phrase clearly identifiable as such. So under Vermont law at present, it's required that the boat have the name of the government or department of the government owning it. The CFR says that it's required to be clearly identifiable. So that could be having the name of the governmental entity on the bow on both sides. This was something that I had worked with the US Coast Guard over last summer when dealing with cleanup language and some things from their compliance audit. And Sergeant Carbo, in looking at this again, thinks that he would be more comfortable reporting to the future compliance audits that we have this clearly identifiable as such language, which comes directly from the CFR. So I think it's being extra clear on what it needs to be clearly identifiable, but the CFR is going to apply to these vessels in any event, but now it's also including it in Vermont statute.
Okay.
I agree. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Okay, we're now going to get to—
Who's going to argue with the CFR and making it consistent? And it just seems like it's.
Okay, last ones in boats. The first change in section 16, the definition of vessel excludes seaplanes, racing shells, or rowing sculls. And it was an extra overly exuberant usage of just the word vessel for purposes of what is allowed in a designated swimming area, to use just vessel here instead of the boat, canoe, or water vehicle. So instead using vessel plus the types of vessels that are pulled out of the definition of vessel. So also including seaplanes, racing shells, or rowing sculls. So they would not be allowed to be in a designated swimming area. And then catching, an instance where vessel was being used and it wasn't incorporating those other types of vessels, the seaplanes, racing shells, or rowing sculls, and it should. And that's for purposes of the distance requirements and operation within 200 feet of a diver's down flag. And that was something that Sergeant Carbo and I noticed when we were going through the language in the House.
I just need to understand this. Up in Joe's Pond, there's someone who has a seaplane and they are taking off and landing routinely, and they have a camp. And they obviously have it, well, moored, I guess, because you don't have a runway. The pond is the runway. This would not preclude, with that 200 feet of shore. I just want to make sure that if someone has a camp and has a seaplane, that somehow are we restricting the use or their ability to access it from their property? Could you just confirm that?
Yeah, so if you look at the language, and I'll put it back up, for the distance requirements in C1 in section 17, it's saying that it cannot be operated within 200 feet of the shoreline or other vessels, except at a speed of less than 5 miles per hour that does not create a wake. So
that's existing law.
Right.
Okay. All right. All right. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't changing something that someone would say, now I have a seaplane and now you basically the restrictions are that I can't access it, or I got to anchor it out in the middle of the pond and row out to it. I don't know. I just wanted to be clear on what we were doing here.
Yeah, you still could go to the shoreline. It's just a speed restriction. And we are now out of my realm of knowledge as to how these operate, but it's location and speed related. It's not just saying you can't have a seaplane within 200 feet of the shore.
Okay. All right, I just thought I would confirm that. There must be seaplanes up on Memphremagog, Russ.
There once in a while, but not any not what you're talking about. Once in a while, somebody will come in. They had one earlier in the year, was landing on the ice, but I think it was just to drop somebody off at one of the condos that was to the right of me, but that wasn't around very long.
Okay.
We'll have one land at the east side once in a while. I don't know if that was Chittenden or not, but it could have been.
As in Senator Chittenden has a seaplane?
I don't know. I don't know if that was him or not, but it could
I
have
have
been.
no such- I have no such vehicle.
Yes.
I do have some process questions. Is this going to be on today? And do I just speak to
No.
what we? Okay.
It won't be on today.
All right.
I don't.
Oh,
think
you
it-
mean, are you back on S66 or are you on
Well-
this bill?
Both of these, like, so if they're warned, do we? What
Oh.
is expected?
66, we're going to concur today.
Mhm.
Okay.
What does that mean, concur? So does that mean that as I, the reporter, I speak to this, or you as the chair? What should I prepare for?
Right ahead. You can just move that the Senate has reviewed the bill and concur with the House amendments.
Okay,
And that's the end of it.
It's the end of it. That's it.
fair enough.
Okay, go right ahead, Anthea.
Okay. So I think this is going to take us out of boats. And we are now getting to all new language that the House is proposing. The first one is on signal lamps. These are your blue lights and your red lights.
Oh, here we go.
And they have gone with H56 in its entirety, except for one deviation from that. So if you remember back to differences between H56 and S40, S40 had the primarily parked language that H56 didn't have. So this would not require the vehicles to be parked, but it does require that the lights only be visible primarily from the rear. And this is both iterations. So it's saying law enforcement can have the red lights visible primarily from the rear, and that subclass of fire vehicles can have the blue light visible primarily from the rear. The one deviation that the House has from H56 as it was introduced is dealing with the amber signal lamps. So if you look at the bottom of page 36, existing law requires that amber signal lamps be used on road maintenance vehicles, service vehicles and wreckers, and snow removal equipment when they're being used to remove snow. And that amber lights need to be mounted so as to be visible from all sides of the motor vehicle. Existing law goes on to say that a vehicle equipped with an amber signal lamp may not be issued a permit for the installation of a siren. And since language in H56 was going to allow the combo lights, so for law enforcement, it was going to be red or red and amber on the rear, and for emergency services vehicles, it was going to be blue or amber in combination. Originally, the language in H56 was slightly different from this, but what came up in House Transportation in terms of testimony is there are vehicles that are currently on the road that are being used by for example, volunteer firefighter who is able to have a siren and a permit on that vehicle. But then that individual is also using the vehicle to operate a snowplow. And that is in conflict with existing law. And the way to eliminate the conflict where you're saying you can't have both an amber signal lamp and a permit for a siren, even if you're not using the siren when you have the amber signal lamp on, is to strike that sentence. This is one of several ways that you could approach the issue. This is language that is similar, if this language is identical to language that the House included in their proposal in the miscellaneous motor vehicle bill 2 years ago in 2019. So some of you have seen this small piece of the light siren signal lamp debate before. But those are the differences from H56. There still will be differences from this language to S40.
So now let me get this clear. A fire truck can have a blue light in the back, one blue light, but it can be operated while the fire truck is moving.
Correct. And it's only, it's not all emergency services vehicles. It's the ones that are like owned by the fire station that could have that blue light.
And that's different than what we had, which was,
We had
you could do it
department
if you were
department.
stopped.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. That's going to be
Right.
the thing. That's going to be.
Right.
And that is the key distinction between H56 and where this committee got to with its amendment that it was sort of considering for
Whatever
S40.
happened to the parked vehicle that everybody wanted, which we were finally going to resolve.
It's
Why-
exactly where the concern was, Senator Mazzo, exactly where the concern was, where this is just gonna morph into something that is just uncontrollable. And that's how I feel about it. I mean, you're gonna have people running around with blue lights, it's an uncontrolled situation, and it's not gonna end well.
So we should not agree to this. We should say,
I think it should
we
be.
want to keep with it needs to be stopped.
Well, that's a committee to discuss. So go right ahead. I want this discussion and get it one way or the other because, we've discussed it so many times, but go right ahead. I want to hear from everybody.
I'll restate the concern I stated the last time on this discussion is that if the vehicle is moving with a blue light illuminated from a distance, that would send a signal that the police are on their way. And so my concern is that would then allay concern, and then others might not call the police if it's an emergency situation or call 911. Since then, Chief Morton reached out to me and he said just the mechanicry of the light configurations are not really resolvable to make it feasible to allow for the non-moving pieces. But I don't think we want to push forward on this. I think we want to get this right. And I would welcome Senator Perchlik, who understands this issue better than I think I saw your hand go up too. Would love to hear your thoughts I think you've spoken with, I don't know his name, but the gentleman on House Transportation that knows this issue really well too.
Yeah, can I ask just a fundamental question before we get into the overall thing?
Just take a message.
Okay.
Anthea,
Senator ballots or something.
amber is the same as yellow, is that right, Anthea?
Yeah.
No, it's just an
That's
extra phone call so you can see it.
Yeah, just tell her I'll call her back. Get in a roll call.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
And then one thing that I will add to the discussion, just because it came up in House Transportation, is the concern about the hard wiring of all of the lights came up, and the fact that if you're ordering it with the rear lights, they're going to run when all of the lights are on. So that was a technological concern that was raised in House Transportation.
It was raised with us as well.
I mean, if it means passing it, then I'm okay with the bill that we had in the Senate, that S40 or whatever, the language that we had. I think, we had seemed to come pretty close to agree on that. I don't think we took any testimony against it. And so I still support that position. There's the stuff in here about the amber lights and the police. I mean, we can fix that. I don't know if anybody really cares about that. I never hear the police, raising it as a concern about what lights they can use, but I don't really have an opinion on that. Happy to fix it, but it's more about the one blue light on the back of the fire truck that I think is important, and I don't remember anybody testifying against.
I thought we had it resolved by having with a vehicle park, and finally we were going to go along with that. But I can't believe we're the only state that doesn't have this issue. I think other states might, some other states, but I'm just reluctant to have it go wide open and not have it just a parked vehicle. I know the wiring is in the vehicle or whatever, but there's got to be a way of changing it. But I don't know.
Yeah, don't order a truck with it.
I'll let
if
the
it's not legal.
committee can decide. Go right ahead. Yes, Senator Chittenden.
One other thing I want to say, I was in the South Burlington Rotary today, and a gentleman named Skylar Jackson said, I served in the House back in the late 70s, and I knew Senator Mazza back then was on transportation, and you better listen to Senator Mazza when it comes to important transportation issues. And the blue light issue better than just about everybody else. So I'd love to hear more of your thoughts and your concerns on this, because I don't.
No, this is a different subject altogether, and I'm not any more knowledgeable than anybody else on this one, but I'm afraid that my only fear is that we're going to expand it to volunteers and everybody's going to have a blue light. That's what frightens me. Not that I don't respect and admire volunteer firefighters, but I think we're going to dilute the fact of what a blue light means. I will go along with a parked vehicle, like I said, but I don't want to, the committee can decide this one. I just, I'll leave it up to the committee. Go right ahead.
We can, I'd be open to change, concurring with further instance of amendment where we go back to our language. And
Okay, can we do that, Anthea?
Yeah, you can do
Sure.
that. You can stick in the parked piece in both of those instances for the red lights on the rear and the blue lights on the rear.
Do I hear that consensus from the committee?
The other option would be to pass over it and a couple of people meet with the house folk and see if there's some agreement on it. Otherwise, and then before we do that, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes we do that rather than a committee of conference. So we could just go back to our original position and then see if we can negotiate something.
Well, I know, what's his name from Brandon, Pittsford,
Representative Shaw.
Shaw, yeah, he's been very, very, and I thought he was really going to be excited the fact that the vehicle could have it on his park, because that's what he's really promoted over the years. So I'm surprised that they're pushing it all the way, because I think he would be acceptable to a park, but I can't speak for him at this point. I haven't talked to him because I told him a while ago that we were seriously looking at the issue of a parked vehicle with a blue light. He was very, very excited about that. So something happened, and so anyway, whatever your thoughts are. Anybody got suggestions this point so we can move on?
I could also draft the language and then you could
Okay.
do with it what you want if it's
All right,
talk
thank
to.
Let's
your
do that.
counterparts.
Let's start there. Okay, we can,
because I don't,
a few more minutes. Yes.
because I don't know if we're gonna, they also added this ATV language, which I don't really, so we might already have something we want to amend.
Do you want me to go through the ATV language quickly before you have to be on the floor?
Sure, yeah, give us about 5 minutes so we have a little break.
Mhm.
I think we can do this pretty quickly. So they also added 2 sections about ATVs. These were recommendations that came from the administration. So if you'll remember, a year ago, you made through the T-bill some fairly broad and a number of changes to the ATV laws to require helmets, to require registration in instances, to add more clarity to where they can be operated. And it was an oversight on the part of the administration that the language for the registration and the TAD and for operation on ice didn't track snowmobiles. So under the law that was enacted about a year ago, it was saying that you did not need to have a registration or a trail access decal for an ATV that was operated on frozen bodies of water designated by ANR, and that you didn't need to have protective headgear. What it really should have been was you do not need a TAD, the trail access decal, and you do not need headgear, but it does still need to be registered. So that's what section 36 is doing. It is taking out the operation on frozen bodies of water language that you see struck out in subdivision E from under the broad category of this is when you don't need registration or a trail access decal, and instead adding it as its own subdivision 4 that's saying you do not need a trail access decal or to use protective headgear on those frozen bodies of water that are designated by the Agency of Natural Resources. So if you're looking at what this means for people going forward, under the law at present, you need to have a trail access decal. You do not need to have a trail access decal, and you do not need to register your ATV, and you do not need to wear headgear on a frozen body of water. If this is enacted, you still don't have to wear a headgear, you still don't have to have a trail access decal, but you would need to register your ATV. And that would be similar to the treatment of snowmobiles.
So we got an email from a House member saying it was going to change what the and I actually somewhere I think we all were sent that.
It might have been on the section.
If you're
Is that-
talking about the two different types of helmets,
I don't know. It has to do with the fact that they were allowing them to use town roads, and that why would you have to have a TAD or a VASA membership under that condition? And
so this is a concern. There are, I cannot remember who spoke to it, but he spoke to it on the floor. There are parts of Vermont where there is not the VASA system, that under the existing law, you still need to have a trail access decal. And there are some people who think that you should not have to have a trail access decal if you are never going to be operating on the VASA trail system. This language doesn't do anything around that. That is a separate concern that has come up independent of these two sections in the T-bill as proposed by the House. So this is just dealing with frozen bodies of water.
so is there this
No.
misunderstanding? It came from Representative Norris, who is from Addison Rutland District. And so was this email sent as a result of a misunderstanding?
I don't think it was sent as a result of a misunderstanding. I think this is something that Rep. Norris cares deeply about, and he spoke on the floor and said probably what is similar to your email. But it is not necessarily in response to language that was included in the House Transportation's proposal, so much as he thinks that should be a change to existing law, and it's not addressed in the T-bill, and I think he would like it to be addressed in the T-bill.
Oh, well, there's always another year.
So just to paraphrase this, so I understand, it's only on frozen bodies of water that they don't want to belong to any clubs, and they don't want to have to wear a helmet, and that's what the concern is. Is that what it is?
So it's simply, the concern is they want to treat, the administration wants to treat snowmobiles and ATVs the same. And in the language they proposed last year, they accidentally didn't treat them the same. They were saying the ATV on the frozen body of water doesn't need to be registered. And now they're saying it does need to be registered.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Anthea, but isn't that frozen body of water a state highway? Or doesn't the state have, don't they have to follow the same rules on a frozen body of water? Or no?
You can get DUI, you can get DUI on the lake, so.
Yeah, I mean, but there are other things. So for example, you don't need to have headgear on the frozen body of water. And this only deals with bodies of water that has been designated by the agency for operating ATVs and snowmobiles on.
Is this the one Lewis Porter had some input?
Yes, this came from Lewis Porter as the sort of spokesperson on ATVs
Okay.
for the administration. He is requesting this change.
Bobby Starr had some concern. I had him call him about it, so he called me about it also, so.
But I think one of the things that Bobby Starr had a concern about, I know we're getting close on time, but that was a completely different matter where they had to wear helmets inside of a side-by-side that had roll cages on it. And why did they have to do that?
So that's
And
the
that's what I've been hearing too from a lot of people.
So that's the next section.
All right, why don't we end it here, because we're not gonna go much further on this one, so.
This
Yeah.
is, so it's the very last section of the bill, but that is the one that deals with the bifurcation where you need less of a helmet if it has a roll bar and seat belts.
Okay.
So that's the section that I think maybe more people have questions about.
All right, so we're gonna end it till tomorrow morning again. We'll be back on at 9 o'clock. And should I ask for a roll call on the T-bill today? For passage?
You normally do that?
Yes, he
Yes.
does.
Okay, I'll do that. All right. Okay, see you all at 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Bye.
Sir Miles, I'm gonna be in tomorrow morning. Oh, he left, but I'm gonna go by 5 tomorrow. All right. See you, Russ. Bye.